To truly tackle inflation and economic instability, the focus should be on addressing federal deficit spending, which fuels Fed's money printing practices. This can be achieved through sustainable budgeting rules, which I've talked about time and time again. Hello. Welcome to this week's economy. I'm your host, Dr. Vance Ginn. Thank you for joining me again today. Well, here in episode 74, we've got a lot to talk about, including 6 election tips for Trump and Harris. So let's get right to it. Number 1, Harris calls for no federal taxes on tips. The news says that VP Harris recently backed a proposal to eliminate federal income taxes on tips, a move previously championed by former President Trump, who's been talking about that on the campaign trail already. But is this enough to win over voters? My take, the bipartisan appeal of exempting tips from federal income taxes, even endorsed by libertarians, misses the bigger picture. This policy does nothing to curb the federal government's chronic overspending. Reducing revenues, potentially, without any accompanying spending restraint could exacerbate the deficit and further distort the tax code by picking winners and losers. Many Americans are grappling with economic hardships exacerbated by high taxes and persistent inflation, potentially on the brink of a recession. And instead of narrowly focused policies such as this, we need comprehensive solutions like expanding the Trump-era tax cuts, which benefit all American households. The real issue in Washington is out of control spending. Congress must take serious steps to slash federal spending and implement a strict monetary rule to prevent the Fed from further economic manipulation. Number 2, Texas energy concern. In the news, despite West Texas natural gas prices trading below zero for much of the year, Texas struggles to put this vital resource to consumers. My take, Texas is blessed with abundant natural resources, particularly natural gas. This reliable energy resource is crucial for the state's growing population. However, increasing government intervention through mandates for ESG investing, potential carbon taxes, and subsidies for wind and solars, along with the Texas Energy Fund to give low interest rates to low interest rates for projects of natural gas, is undermining the market principles that have been driven Texas energy success. Texas should embrace a light touch regulatory framework that encourages competition and innovation through market forces. Removing barriers to private investment in energy production and in distribution, such as ESG mandates, will ensure a competitive market that reduces cost, improves service quality, and fosters technological advancement. Number 3, Trump and the Federal Reserve. In the news, President Trump recently suggested that presidents should have more influence over the Federal Reserve, a sentiment echoed by VP candidate J.D. Vance and some of his advisors, who plan to change the Fed if he is reelected. My take, while the president indirectly influences the Fed through appointments, history, like with President Nixon, shows that presidential pressure on the Fed can lead to negative outcomes. To truly tackle inflation and economic instability, the focus should be on addressing federal deficit spending, which fuels Fed's money printing practices. This can be achieved through sustainable budgeting rules, which I've talked about time and time again. The Federal Reserve must expedite reducing its bloated balance sheet and adhere to a strong monetary rule to restore Americans' purchasing power. Too much money chasing too few goods is a recipe for inflation. Number 4, inflation and the election. In the news, inflation remains a top issue as the election season heats up, with both Harris and Trump pledging to tackle it. Harris, in particular, has vowed to combat quote-unquote price gouging by companies. My take, if VP Harris truly had the power to stop inflation, why hasn't it been done already under the Biden administration, where she is a member? The reality is that neither the president nor Congress has much control, if any, over inflation directly. Instead of targeting businesses, politicians need to acknowledge their role in perpetuating inflation. The root of the problem lies in excessive government spending and the Federal Reserve's excessive money printing. By reining in spending and controlling the money supply, Congress and the Fed can stop distorting the market, driving up the cost of goods and services for American families. Number 5, is a recession approaching? In the news, concerns are growing that the United States may be headed towards a recession, particularly after the disappointing July jobs report triggered the SOM rule. My take is And the sum rule is basically you have unemployment rate that's rising at a rapid rate that usually indicates a recession for the future, okay? So my take is the United States has been on a troubling economic path for some time, driven by the federal government's relentless deficit spending. This spending has led to higher taxes, inflation, and interest rates, all of which are hurting Americans. A recession seems likely at this point, and while it may be temporarily worsen the economic situation, correcting the market distortions caused by government overreach could be necessary. To navigate through this, we must get a grip on government spending by unleashing the private sector through free market capitalism and pro-growth policies, like reducing spending, cutting taxes, lowering regulations, and controlling money printing. We can emerge stronger and more resilient. Number 6, school choice in Texas. In the news, the Texas House Committee on Public Education recently held a hearing on educational opportunities in Texas. Texas is the largest red state and does not have school choice, even though 12 other states have universal or near universal school choice through education savings accounts. My take, despite historic increases that I discussed in my testimony to the committee so the historic increases in public education funding recently and over time, student performance in Texas is flat or declining. Texas needs to catch up, as many states have educational opportunities not available here. Economist Milton Friedman once said about improving education, quote, "The only solution is to break the monopoly, introduce competition, and give the customers alternatives," end quote. The time is now, which my research has shown, for Texas to follow this vision with a, quote, Texas approach, end quote, for improving education, more pay for quality teachers, and a better economy. So media hits that I've had recently are I've published pieces or given quotes or completed interviews this week at the Pelican Institute on bad Google decision, the Kansas Policy Institute on improving state budget processes, the Mackinac Center on overspending in Michigan, and many more that are coming soon. You don't want to miss any of those, including my episode with Varney and company on Fox Business. Don't miss that episode. I'll have that in the show notes page as well. What about the Let People Prosper show? Well, don't miss the latest episode 109 of the Let People Prosper show with a great discussion with Steve Moore, an economist and author serving as a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation and a co-founder of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity and author of the book Trumponomics: Inside the America First Plan to Revive Our Economy. Great discussion. You don't want to miss it. The upcoming Tuesday episode of the Let People Prosper show is another excellent discussion with Randy Hicks, president of Georgia Center for Opportunity, on how to overcome poverty through community-based solutions rather than top-down government policies. The quote of the week is by Ronald Reagan, open quote, "The difference between them and us is that when we want to check government spending and they want to spend government checks," end quote. It's so true these days, and across the political spectrum, Republicans and Democrats in many ways. I don't know who the them is anymore, but this is when you get back to is to check government spending time and again, because that is the ultimate burden of government as a whole. The Bible verse of the week is, this is Philippians 2:13, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Let his will be done in you." So in conclusion, thank you for joining me for episode 74 of this week's Economy. For more insights, please visit vanceginn.com and get a paid subscription to my Substack newsletter at vanceginn.substack.com today, so you can receive these insights in your inbox every time they come out. You don't want to miss it. So God bless you, and let people prosper.